Hi, it's Joni Michaels, and it's my pleasure to introduce you to Joe Clark, host of Consider This Program. Joe's a certified financial planner and former professor at Purdue University. He's the managing partner for the Financial Enhancement Group. Joe's passion is teaching people about their money so they don't make inefficient financial decisions that lead to frustration and devastation. The Financial Enhancement Group serves more than 900 families in 31 states and manages more than $400 million. The Financial Enhancement Group takes care of people who don't want to worry about their money so they don't make inefficient financial decisions. Joe addresses your questions about money and 5 critical elements of finance: retirement planning, or what we like to call your life after work, tax planning, investment planning, life happens, the good, the bad, and the ugly of life, and legacy planning. The Financial Enhancement Group can be reached at 800-928-4001 or visit yourlifeafterwork.com. The Financial Enhancement Group is an SEC-registered investment advisor. Securities offered through World Equity Group, Inc., member FINRA, SIPC.
Well, good morning and welcome to Consider This. I'm your host, Joe Clark.
And I'm Angie Kinzer.
Happy to have you along. Hey, one of the things we are going to hit on today is, should your home be considered a financial nest egg, or should it be considered a place of residence only? Interesting conversations, massively different opinions that I've even had over the course of my career. Angie, of course, being the more humorous of the two, I guess I should say, has come up with some interesting housing facts.
Yes. I knew we were going to be talking about this, and I came across these fun facts with housing. And, well, the first couple aren't actually fun. They're informative, and that is, it's talking about remodeling. So if you're remodeling a house, the average remodel cost to do a bathroom is about $10,500, but it has 102% return back if you were to go to sell your home.
Allegedly.
What's
the second most?
The second most is a kitchen.
Yep.
And
the
it
third
has a 90% return rate.
Did it give you the third?
Nope.
My realtor friends tell me, whether this is accurate or not, the third is landscaping. Yeah, bathroom, kitchen, landscaping.
Now this is very interesting. There's a Japanese company that's developed a residential earthquake-proof system that actually raises a house off its foundation 3 centimeters using air pressure when the sensors detect a earthquake, and then levitates during the earthquake and sets back down on the foundation, and they're expecting that to come out in other countries like as soon as next year. Isn't
Wow.
that crazy?
Yes.
It lifts up.
But I mean, I've been in an earthquake. Been in one in Indiana. My wife thought I had a nightmare or was falling asleep. I said, we just had an earthquake.
Yeah.
Here in Anderson, Indiana.
Yes.
And my brother called 10 minutes later, said, "Did you feel the earthquake?" And it's kind of like Barb goes,
something like
you were the one
too.
that was asleep. And then in California, I was in one.
Okay, real quickly. Number 4, did you know that a brass doorknob disinfects itself within 8 hours automatically because the ions in the metals has a toxic effect like on viruses?
I did not know that was why, but I
Brass,
do know
yes.
that they used those back in the eras of
Yes.
the plague and everything else,
That's what the
because
brass-
they kind of figured that out back
Now
then.
this is the last one I have in Scotland. A homeowner paints their door red when they pay off their mortgage.
Did not know that. Seen multiple colored doors in Scotland. It
Yes.
is fun to drive around and see them. Ireland's the same way, in Dublin and everywhere else. Like multiple colored doors. Wonder if that goes all the way through. I hope your door gets painted off soon. Hey, you're listening. Consider This Program. I'm Joe Clark. Angie Kinzer. We'll take a break and be right back.
Hi, Joni Michaels here. Joe's been hosting financial radio programs for over 20 years, and during his 7 years at Purdue, Joe developed the 5 critical elements. You see, there are 5 areas we all go through that can impact and even derail our retirement plans. YourLifeAfterWork.com has been focused on you on your retirement for over 20 years. You may have had a 401k as well as IRAs. Those are all defined contribution plans. Consider This program is about your defined contribution plans becoming defined distributions. You see, we all exit. You'll either take money out of those retirement plans when you decide or when the IRS decides, or your heirs will have to deal with the situation, but we all exit. I encourage you to call 800-928-4001 to meet with one of the talented financial advisors at the Financial Enhancement Group. I've listened to this show for years, and what Joe says just makes sense. Don't you think it's time for you to call 800-928-4001, yourlifeafterwork.com. Now let's get back to the show.
Capital loss harvesting may sound like a negative thing. Why would anybody want to harvest losses? But from a tax standpoint and an investment standpoint, this is an important conversation. Hi, you're listening to Consider This Program. I am your host, Joe Clark.
And I'm Angie Kinzer.
Happy to have you along. Angie, as you know, is in charge of all things radio podcast driven. So she gets to come up with the topics for the most part. And actually, most of that comes through you folks. So if you've got questions or comments, something you want to know about, give us a call at 800-928-4001. Angie prepares the show, and then I do my best to provide some insight and guidance as I see it. So, Angie, take it away.
Okay, we're going to talk about capital loss harvesting. Yippee!
Well, yippee is an important thing.
I know. I know that it's stuff that you did cover. You go to the Ed Slot organization when they have their meetings each year, and I know because I've seen it before when I get his newsletter, them talking about it a lot.
So what is a capital loss?
Yeah.
No, what is a capital loss? I'm asking you.
Well, when you take a loss and are you talking about harvesting?
Well, yeah. I want to walk it through in somebody else's words instead of mine.
I would rather you do it.
Oh, okay. She's no fun today. All right, so here's the deal. 2007. I have a partnership with an accounting firm up in Lafayette. And the one of the accountants, not one of the partners, walks in my office and shuts the door. And she sits herself down in my chair. This is not normal, by the way. And I said, hello. And I said, what is troubling you? Because something really bothered her. And she put her hands down and her head down, kind of in a form of exasperation, and said, I don't get it. You lose money for your clients every year, and they love you. And I looked at her and said, if I lost money for my clients every year, they would not love me. She goes, yep, I figured that out. What in the world is going on? And it's called capital loss harvesting. So the rules are, and we're not talking about IRAs or 401ks. We're talking about outside investments. If you buy a company, so you've put money into it, it's what we call basis, right? So I always use my coffee cup. So let's say I paid $100 for my coffee cup, right? That's after-tax money. And again, we're not talking about an IRA or 401k. It's after-tax money. I've put $100 into it. And the rules are very, 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 very clear about this. If I sell this coffee cup at a gain, I'm paying the taxes.
Yeah.
I mean, if I sold it and bought it back 30 seconds later, I am paying the taxes. I am recognizing the gain. If, on the other hand, I sold this cup of coffee that I paid $100 for, now for $80, I've got a $20 loss. But depending on who you talk to, it's either unrecognized or unrealized. Nothing's happened. It's just down on paper. And what you'll hear some brokers say and some people in the investment industry say is, well, you don't lose any money until you sell it. Well, that's garbage, right? Every day I want to vote the best dollars that I can. Every day I want to make the best decision that I can with your capital, with my capital, with all of the money that we take care of for people around the country, right? So I don't look at it from a standpoint of, is it at a loss or is it a gain? I look at it from the standpoint, is this a right thing to own at this day and this time? Now, a few times a year, we will actually go in and we will look intentionally for things that have losses. And what used to happen, Angie, is if you bought something at a loss, you had to wait 30 days to buy it back. Right? And if you didn't get to accept the capital loss. You didn't get to use it. And in the world of exchange-traded funds and everything else, there are 100 different ways to buy just about every company that's out there without it being substantially equivalent or substantially identical, right? So if I sell this cup of coffee and I go get a Starbucks cup of coffee, that is not identical. I mean, I don't pay for Starbucks here at the office, right? It's a different thing. It's a cup of coffee, but it's a different cup of coffee. I could take the loss here and reapply my dollars. So what does harvesting mean? Well, harvesting means intentionally looking at them. And one of the things that people, and I had this conversation with somebody over the weekend, individuals who do money on their own tend to have one of two challenges. They either only remember every good trade they ever made. And trust me, after 32 years, not all trades are good. When the market should go up, sometimes it just doesn't, right? When a stock should go up, sometimes it just doesn't, right? Or they remember everything that went bad. And so you can get into this conversation where I had a lady look at me at one of my mastermind groups, and she goes, Joe, respectfully, nobody is going to care about my money more than me. And she actually got mad and walked away at the end of the conversation. So I hope I don't offend any of you, but I looked at her and I go, I totally get that. I totally get that concept. Angie, you probably care more about your money than I do. But you do not have the ability to care for your money like I do.
Okay.
Right? Because I've got 1,000 families and way more than $400 million that we take care of, and technology that I own, and people that work here that I could never do to take care of my own money if it was just my individual account.
Right.
I may care for my money more than you do, and you may care for your money or about your money more than I do, but you can't take better care of it than I do.
And the same thing with situations. When we say your situation's probably unique when something comes up, but it's not unique to us,
Right.
because we've dealt with it with 900 other families.
32 years and 1,000 plus families at a time. We've seen those things, and that's why we build checklists to try to help people walk through that. But that's what capital loss harvesting is, and what happens is people will not intentionally accept capital losses because they don't want to recognize something didn't go the way they want to.
Right.
They'll hold on to stuff longer than they should. Hey, the loss is worth something. I mean, the loss gives us flexibility in periods of gains. There were people in January or in February and March of 2020 that were not able to sell things because they could not afford to recognize the gain, even after they were down 30%.
Wow.
Well, if you'd been harvesting losses all the way along, you had a piggy bank build up of losses that you could use. So there's a magical number on your tax return, Angie. It's called $3,000. That's the amount of capital loss you can deduct every year in excess of your capital gains. So if you've got $100,000 worth of capital gains, you can deduct $103,000 worth of capital losses. What's that worth to you? Well, if you're in the 12% tax bracket, right? It's worth $360.
Yep.
Right, of money that you're not paying out to Uncle Sam.
Now, I do want to clarify this, because when you take care of money, I let you take care of my money. But when I hear losses, that sounds scary to me. But I wanted to clarify, you're talking about particular holdings, not your portfolio overall.
Right. You do not ever and never, ever liquidate everything. What we're talking about is hand selecting those things that need to be harvested, those losses, to be able to offset against gains that need to be used at a later place.
Yes.
You're playing checkers with everybody else that's out there. And I would argue we've moved to a world from, and no disrespect to checker players, but we've moved from checkers to chess. Right? This is a complicated game where you're playing right now, and it involves dealing with market valuations. It deals with the Federal Reserve pumping money into the system. Our money supply is 25% higher than it was 4 weeks ago. Right? That changes everything. You've got those two conditions, and you've got the IRS. When you put all of that together, you need to understand how these strategies are. Give Angie a call at 800-928-4001. Get signed up for a Next Steps meeting. We will walk you through harvesting of capital losses, but we're going to walk you through a 5-fold process where we'll give you things you need to consider today, things you're going to want to consider in the future, and if we choose to partner together, what FEG will do for you. 800-928-4001. Give Angie a call.
Hi, Joni Michaels here. We know you care about your money, but are you tired of worrying about it? The Financial Enhancement Group takes care of people just like you who don't want to worry about their money. As fiduciaries, the team at the Financial Enhancement Group will care for your nest egg just like they would care for their own if they were in your situation. There are many decisions you'll need to make as you face retirement, and the team at the Financial Enhancement Group is here to help you. Call 800-928-4001 or go to yourlifeafterwork.com to set up a time to meet. The confusion and complexity of retirement is almost as daunting as is the excitement of retirement. Don't let your fear and frustration of taxes and investing derail your retirement. Call the Financial Enhancement Group at 800-928-4001. They'll give you a complimentary second opinion on your strategy for retirement. Begin your adventure in your life after work. Call 800-928-4001 or yourlifeafterwork.com. Now back to Consider This program with Joe Clark.
Well, good morning and welcome back to Consider This program. I'm your host, Joe Clark.
And I'm Angie Kinzer.
Homes can be used for a lot of things. I used to tell people back in the old days of estate taxes when you had a whopping $600,000 that you could leave behind without being an estate tax, that homes were often estate tax liabilities, not centers of wealth. But things change. Angie did pick out this topic, even though she's going to try to say that she didn't.
I did.
All right, so you get to fire away and ask the questions.
Well, I mean, honestly, we get this question every year. And so it's a pretty important question. It's, should I sell my house and rent when I retire? And so I kind of dug into it. I found an article, a real recent one. It actually came out last week in the Wall Street Journal, and it was, are you planning to use your home as a retirement nest egg? Not so fast.
Yes.
So, it just goes into, there's two ways we can get value out of our home. We either can borrow against it for money, or we can try to sell it for a profit and use that money.
Somewhere you need to sleep and shave and sit and do
Yes.
all of those other things that you do in a household, right?
But you can do it
And
in a
that
rental.
it could be in a camper. It can be in a mansion. It can be in Scottsdale, Arizona. It can be in Anderson, Indiana. It could be in a rental. It could be in a lease. I genuinely believe that the biggest thing that I have seen so far that has changed my life out of the millennial generation, and that doesn't mean that there's not going to be more to come, but the biggest thing I've seen is the idea of a shared economy, right? The Airbnbs, the Ubers. If I lived in a big city, there is a probability at this point in time I would not own a car.
Right. It's
I mean,
so easy to call an Uber, and they're right there.
And I don't have to pay for car insurance. I don't have to pay for plates. I don't have to pay for any taxes. Right? I just, Uber, and they show up in my driveway, and away I go. And where we live today, that's maybe not a practical answer. I really, really love Scottsdale. Not in July and August,
No.
but in the other 10 months of the year, I would love to have a place there. I probably never will, as long as there's an Airbnb and somebody who's willing to own and take over all of the carry cost. And I'll come back to that in a second, that concept. But if I can show up and leave and I know exactly what my costs are going in and coming out, that is a much better deal for me emotionally, financially. If you've listened to the show very long, we talk about retirement budgets, right? I don't want I wrote a check for several $1,000s this morning before I left to take care of all sorts of things around the house that I wouldn't call normal, right? Water heaters, landscaping, plumber, right? And it's kind of like, I don't need that. I don't need that anywhere else. I want it in my home. So, all right, Ange, back to you.
Okay, so let's say that, the second option, which is you do want to consider it as part of your nest egg, and you're thinking, you know what, I've almost got my house paid off. There's a few years down the road I'm going to retire. So when I get to retirement age, not going to owe on my house anymore, and that's going to be part of my asset base. And so the question is, do you sell it and maybe rent somewhere, or do you take a loan on it and cash the money out of it?
Selling it still leaves you in the pickle of having to replace it.
Yes.
Right? So I would probably go there the least. That would probably be my least favorite option, unless you're truly willing to buy a place of lower value. And I've done this for 32 years. I've heard people talking about downsizing. That does not mean down pricing. Right? What they end up buying is a more expensive place that's smaller than what they had before,
Yes.
and it's all new furniture and everything else.
Yes.
Not a good plan. What the Clark family will be doing is, and this is where I think the home issue comes into play, is most of us this day and age are not trying to leave behind the family home for our kids. They don't want it, right?
Right.
You know, my kids wouldn't want the headache of the carry cost, you know, the landscaping and the electric bill and all that. They love to come visit, but
Right.
they wouldn't want those, you know, the monthly cost of that. And so there's you can borrow equity out of it, or you can do a thing called a reverse mortgage, which we spend more time talking about now than we have in a lot of times because it lets you eliminate volatility out of distribution points. My quick research, and that's not anything, you know, I was a professor at Purdue, so one would think if I said I did research that it would be in a white paper. This is more like on the back of an envelope math.
Okay.
But it appears to me in a period of massive volatility that is less than 6 months of a normal retirement cycle that you can save yourself about 0.5% by having an additional source of funds other than a typical, I'm going to pull it out of a cash account.
Right.
Right. So it provides buffer. Now, we always make sure we have 6 months worth of cash when people are in distribution. That's available, so you don't get sucked down. So that other 6 months worth of money that's in a reverse mortgage home equity line of credit, either of those two will work. But that other 6 months worth of cash that's there, it gives you that year-long buffer, and we think that'll get you through, you know, the majority of the economies that are out there.
What happens with a reverse mortgage when the person who takes it does pass away and now the property is valued much higher than what the mortgage was for?
So the house is sold,
Okay.
and the mortgage is paid. Bankers still get their money, no different than if you died with debt on your mortgage.
Right.
And your family or your charities still get the overage, whatever's left. What you don't have to worry, and this is one of the interesting things, is if your home equity line of credit or if your reverse mortgage is greater than the value that the house sells for, then there's some protection that's built into it. But that's not going to happen to the majority of you that are listening to the show.
Well, the other question is the housing market itself. Let's say you're planning, you know, hey, that's going to be part of my nest egg, but it just so happens that the moment that you get ready to retire, say we're in a recession and now the value's down from what you thought it would be. I mean, maybe it's even down lower than what it was 10 years ago. So that's a factor too.
And it does happen. But the key thing is, should you look at your house as part of your nest egg, you know, you've got to look at it from a standpoint of what is the purpose? When you say a nest egg, am I talking about leaving behind? Because people throw that term around, right?
Right.
Am I leaving behind China for my kids? Am I leaving behind a legacy for my kids? Am I leaving behind an asset for my kids? Or do I have a series of assets that are going to help fund my retirement?
That's what I picture nest egg as.
And if that's what your nest egg is, if that's your earthly value in terms of assets that you're trying to use to be able to accomplish something, I think it is fair to in this day and age. I think it is fair to count part of your house as that, but not all of that.
Okay.
Right? If you've got a $200,000 house and you can drive around and find a $100,000 house that you would move into, then you can probably count 100,000 of it as part of your nest egg.
Right.
You can't count 200,000 because you've got to replace it.
And
right?
that's why doing the cost of living budget before you retire is important as well.
The retirement budget.
Yes.
That where you know what your standard of living is.
Yes.
She said cost of living.
I meant
but it's
standard
of
of
living
living, yes.
and divide that into fixed and social expenses so you know where you are. That is a process that we help people run through day in and day out. I don't have a budget. I haven't had a budget since I had more month than I had money. But I assure you I would never retire, and I would never encourage any of you to retire, separate from the workforce without knowing what that cost is so that you can feel free to actually use your money instead of having any fears that are not harbored correctly. Hey, you're listening to Consider This program. I am Joe Clark, your host, along with Ancient Kinzer. Give her a call, 800-928-4001. We'll take a break and be right back.
Hi, Joni Michaels here. Joe's been hosting financial radio programs for over 20 years, and during his 7 years at Purdue, Joe developed the 5 critical elements. You see, there are 5 areas we all go through that can impact and even derail our retirement plans. YourLifeAfterWork.com has been focused on you on your retirement for over 20 years. You may have had a 401k as well as IRAs. Those are all defined contribution plans. Consider this program is about your defined contribution plans becoming defined distributions. You see, we all exit. You'll either take money out of those retirement plans when you decide or when the IRS decides, or your heirs will have to deal with the situation, but we all exit. I encourage you to call 800-928-4001 to meet with one of the talented financial advisors at the Financial Enhancement Group. I've listened to this show for years, and what Joe says just makes sense. Don't you think it's time for you to call 800-928-4001, YourLifeAfterWork.com. Now let's get back to the show.
I manage money for a living, and obviously March was devastating to the market, and all of a sudden we're back in a rebounded period of time. I can't say that's necessarily true of the economy, but it's obviously true of the market. But I haven't, I didn't lose my job. My son-in-law got furloughed. So he had the unemployment part, and I got to see a little bit of stress, that came from them. But we're not around the segment of the world where you have people that are in absolute despair and dignity when you lose your job. I mean, there's just no way around that. So what have you seen in that, Kimmy, and what are you doing to try to help people there?
So I think that this is a time of tremendous, unprecedented stress for everyone. And no matter who you are, what walk of life you're in, you have been affected in some way by COVID. As you mentioned, some of us are affected to a much more tremendous extent than others. There are many people who have lost their jobs, particularly those in the service industry. There are those who are physically ill or are very concerned that they have conditions that put them at a higher risk for COVID. Unfortunately, there are people who have lost loved ones. And given this time of high stress, many people will try to cope in different ways, and some of those ways are unhealthy. So we are seeing an increased incidence of alcoholism. Alcohol sales are higher than they've ever been.
There is a book by, and Doc, I'd recommend this for you as well. There's a book by Jeff Henderson. Jeff ran marketing for Chick-fil-A down in Atlanta, and then became one of Andy Stanley's sidekicks as one of the pastors down there. He's at Gwinnett Church, and he wrote a book, What Do You Want to Be Known For? And that book, fortunately for me, I read that book before we got here, and it's one of the things that, it's one of the lenses that we use at the Financial Enhancement Group when we make decisions is what do we want to be known for? There are things that I can't control today, but there are things, my actions I can control, my decisions I can control, and that I think that's an important part, and I would spend your time if you can working on keeping your head clear. Another one of my favorite authors that you hear me talk about a lot on this program is James Clear, author of Atomic Habits. And remember that you cannot eliminate a habit, you have to replace it. And the bad news is a lot of us are eliminating good habits right now. I just told Angie coming onto the show, I've had my third cup of coffee after 1 o'clock, and I got it down to no more than 1 cup of coffee after 1 o'clock before we started this. I've allowed myself to enter into a new bad habit, that I'm going to have to fix. I'm going to have to replace it.
I agree. I had actually stopped having caffeine before COVID, and now I'm back on the coffee. And I think you and I can share funny anecdotes about that. But unfortunately, for a lot of people, it's no laughing matter. A lot of people who are casual drinkers now are drinking to excess. I think I mentioned earlier that alcohol sales are up. Unfortunately, people are using substances at a higher rate. I actually heard last week that there was a cocaine shortage, if you could believe that, because of individuals who have turned to that. And because of the need to self-medicate and just kind of get through this time in any way possible, people really are turning to those bad habits, and some of those people are having very dire consequences because of that.
Yeah, we're going to have to work our way out of that once the other part's over. And I think we have a long way to work out of the economy, which means there's going to be people out there that are stressed and are going to need nurturing and love long after where we are right now. So, Doc, what would you? I mean, if you had a kid in front of you, a young adult that was in school, because this is one that really bothers me. Angie's daughter is graduating from high school and going off to Ball State. My niece is graduating, going off to Purdue. What would you tell a young person? Not necessarily with the financial pains that some people are experiencing or the lost jobs, but what would you tell them to get their head right going into the university space?
hmm I would tell people that we are resilient as a society. We have had many challenges in the past with, the Great Depression, for example, and other things, and that we will get through this in the same way um, that we got through those other challenges, which is putting our heads together and figuring a way through. So I would encourage them to hold on to their dreams, to keep pursuing those dreams. Now might look a little different than it did um, in the past, but again, we'll get through this and we'll thrive. And they're going to be part of that. They're going to be part of our success tomorrow. So I would really encourage them to keep their head up, keep focused on their goals, and help be part of our future.
Hey, man, I am doing my best to drop this word "new normal."
hmm
I think every time we go through something traumatic or shocking, you come out with improvements and sadly enough some shortfalls, like we talked about with our caffeine or alcohol or cocaine. But we've come out with some things that are really going to make us a better place, and it's not a new normal. It is normal. I mean, we evolve. We figure out how to champion the cause as America, and I will write my newspaper column in the morning for this week. But I don't believe that I've experienced a genuine form of unity since 9/11. And
mm
there's a political divide that we're probably never going to get over, but there is a sense of unity that as people we are going to get through this, but we're going to get through it with your help, and people like you that are able to to keep us flat-footed, right, and anchored in our beliefs and in who we are.
I think you're absolutely right. We will get through it. I think it's important to look to our thought leaders, let the scientists do their jobs, and let them help us, help guide us through this. I think we need to look to our legislators and our politicians to make rules. We need to abide by those rules. And I think step by step, day by day, we'll get to the other side.
We appreciate it. Hey, it's been Dr. Camula Wright. She's been here with us. She's from CareSource down in Indianapolis, and just a very very important topic. As we go through this world, I assure you, everybody who is up at 6 a.m. listening to this on WIBC or on my podcast, I assure you, you are not most likely one of the people that are in dire straits, but you know somebody who is. Whether it was somebody at work, whether it's somebody that's in one of your social settings, there are people that are out there that are hurting, and this is just my personal request, just for you to try to reach out, connect with them, let them know that you care, let them know what we just talked about in the show, that they will get through it, we will get through it, and our economy will get through it, and it's going to be different, but that's not anything different than what we've ever experienced. When we have challenges, we come out better.
Hi, Joni Michaels here. We know you care about your money, but are you tired of worrying about it? The Financial Enhancement Group takes care of people just like you who don't want to worry about their money. As fiduciaries, the team at the Financial Enhancement Group will care for your nest egg just like they would care for their own if they were in your situation. There are many decisions you'll need to make as you face retirement, and the team at the Financial Enhancement Group is here to help you. Call 800-928-4001 or go to yourlifeafterwork.com to set up a time to meet. The confusion and complexity of retirement is almost as daunting as is the excitement of retirement. Don't let your fear and frustration of taxes and investing derail your retirement. Call the Financial Enhancement Group at 800-928-4001. They'll give you a complimentary second opinion on your strategy for retirement. Begin your adventure in your life after work. Call 800-928-4001 or yourlifeafterwork.com. Now back to Consider This program with Joe Clark.
So you inherited a company, you bought a company, you started a company. All three can happen. What do you do with your kids? How do you transfer it to the next generation? And what if they don't want it? Hey, you're listening to Consider This program. I'm your host, Joe Clark.
And I'm Angie Kinzer.
Happy to have you along. Go ahead, Ange. You've got questions? I'm going to do my best to have answers.
Okay, well, the topic is the tricky task of handing a family business to the next generation.
And it is tricky.
It is tricky. I think a lot of the key to it is some succession planning.
Mm-hmm.
And so I guess, since you've had to do that as a business owner, what are some tips you could give for planning ahead, like for smooth succession in a family business?
In football and in hockey, they call it going to where the puck's heading, right? So you always want to know to the best of your ability what it's going to look like in the future, what you want it to look like, right? So in my case, I have two daughters. I love them both dearly, and neither of them want to have anything to do with the business. Because of our size, we are still legally obligated to have a succession plan, right? So our chief investment strategist, our director of financial planning, our chief of compliance, and our lead paraplanner are all partners inside of the company. And they don't own as much of the stock as I do, but they are all owners in terms of where the company is. And I think, I'm only 53. There's no mapped out date for me to walk out the front door and not come back, right? So I think what happens in succession planning is people start when it's an issue, right? Right. So we have challenges. I'm 53, and the way that I run the company might be different than a 32-year-old would want to run it. Oddly enough, my interest is still in helping more families and growing and investing back in the business, as opposed to people who would be more, it's a good business, right? To protect what we have as opposed to continue to grow it. I'm very, very interested in continuing to grow and to help more families understand what's going on. But you can have very different viewpoints when you have ownership. When you do succession planning, you by definition have partners, and they may not have the same interest voting wise as you do. But you've got to find people who are reasonably aligned with you, and you have to do that before you walk out the door.
And I think this is either easier or makes it more tricky, and that is if you're leaving it to a family member, because I'm sure that you've heard of things that have gone wrong.
I could draw off hundreds of them, I get why you can say that, Angie. You're handing over a business to a child versus handing over a business to people that you've worked with for 20 years. You would consider it, handing it over to a child, tougher, because any decision they made that was not your decision, you would view as wrong, right?
Well, yeah.
The challenge is, when I tell you that a business is a baby, right?
Letting go of control.
Do you know the hours? Literally, think about it, the hours, that I have put into building this thing. And every time I sell shares to to my partners, I cringe,
Right.
right? Because it's painful. I mean, it hurts. And
you always say people would bring their statement to Thanksgiving dinner if they could, and you would bring your business.
I don't care about my statement. I care about my business.
Yes.
That's and you're right. I mean, we've had FEG shirts at Thanksgiving. So
Yes.
So transferring that business is a tricky thing. You've got to deal with the tax consequence. You've got to deal with, and what happens a lot in our farm families is the sons want the farm ground and the daughters don't, or the daughters want the farm ground but they don't farm. They don't want the family legacy getting out of their hands. They want it for their kids, but the
Right.
brothers do the farming. You see a lot of that, but coming up with that how do we value the business based on transferring it when you've got one child who works in the business and one who doesn't. In most small businesses, and my case is no different. The majority of my net worth is in this company, not sitting in a bank account, right?
Do you think you were inspired to really work on our succession plan because of having a friend who suddenly died that didn't have a plan?
And that's a real story, by the way, guys.
Yes.
I think I took it more serious after Mike passed away, but at the same time, remember, we'd already started the succession plan. Mike died in 2016. We'd started, Adam and Don had both bought into the company back in 2012.
But I mean,
Right.
his company.
Watching what happened there certainly inspired me to move along, right? To get the process in place. But you still have to deal with the taxes, the financials, the emotional. I mean, everything that you can write down about the transference of a business from one generation to the next. Every trait that you can think of, and do not leave off emotional.
No.
Right? Emotional, control, process, objective. You can write out all of those, and believe me, we've tangled over most of those things that you can possibly imagine. Hopefully those conversations have got us to a better place, as opposed to one person running a ship and by themselves. You still have to have a captain, but hopefully those conversations have helped us get to a better place. But there are things to think about, Angie, and there are, if I was working with somebody else to manage my money, I assure you I would ask what the succession plan was. And I think what happens most of the time, people go to a broker and they say, well, if something happens to me, there's a broker down the hall. Well, that's not the same thing.
And you've actually had that question on friends that we've had come in that are considering being families. What happens if you're gone?
Yep. And I think they need to have an answer. So every meeting we have, I have a paraplanner in it. I hate answering doctors' questions 6 times. It just drives me insane. So our process is set up so you answer the questions 1 time, somebody else writes them down. We have those answers so you don't have to relive that kind of pain. Did that really happen to you back in 1972? Yes, sir, it did. Right? I'm not telling your friend about it either.
Well, and at the doctor's office, the first person comes in, what are you here for today?
Yeah.
And so you tell them.
Yeah.
Then the next person comes
then
in,
I forget
so what can I do for you
and then
today?
I forget what I told the other person, so I don't like that. And then, so the other part of that is in my meetings, I also always have an associate advisor.
Yes.
And that way nobody ever has to start over. I want continuity for your planning, whether it's I'm taking care of you, whether Darren and Aaron are taking care of you, or whether it's us taking care of your kids. And, that continuity of planning matters a lot to me. When we deal with generational faults in the middle class, to me, a large portion of it comes because your money is separate from your kids' money, is separate from your brother's money, as opposed to having, kind of like a family office where we're making the best tax and financial decisions across the board. And that's really what we attempt to get done. We have a beneficiary program where your beneficiaries pay the same fee that you do, even though they have a lot less money, things like that. We really try to structure that continuity. Hey, 800-928-4001. Give Angie a call. Again, it's 800-928-4001. We'll take a break and be right back.
Hi, Joni Michaels here. Joe's been hosting financial radio programs for over 20 years, and during his 7 years at Purdue, Joe developed the 5 critical elements. You see, there are 5 areas we all go through that can impact and even derail our retirement plans. YourLifeAfterWork.com has been focused on you on your retirement for over 20 years. You may have had a 401k as well as IRAs. Those are all defined contribution plans. Consider this program is about your defined contribution plans becoming defined distributions. You see, we all exit. You'll either take money out of those retirement plans when you decide or when the IRS decides, or your heirs will have to deal with the situation, but we all exit. I encourage you to call 800-928-4001 to meet with one of the talented financial advisors at the Financial Enhancement Group. I've listened to this show for years, and what Joe says just makes sense. Don't you think it's time for you to call 800-928-4001, YourLifeAfterWork.com. Now let's get back to the show.
There are periods of time when tax rules change, laws change, and people aren't given a lot of notice to be able to make proper amends. One of those happened December 20th of 2019 with the invention or creation, I guess I should say, of the Secure Act. You're listening to Consider This Program. I'm your host, Joe Clark.
I'm Angie Kinzer.
So it's hard to imagine in the world we live in today where we've now got the CARES Act and now the HEROES Act, why the Secure Act even matters. But there's a lot to understand about your IRA, and there's a lot to understand if you happen to have left that IRA to a trust. So Angie's going to ask me some questions. I'm going to do my best to answer them. Let me explain to you that on our team we have a CPA. And I have CPA partners in multiple cities, and I still go 3 days, twice a year, to deal with Ed Slott and the IRA Help Group. There's about 380 of us, and this year it was all on Zoom, naturally. But they're tax attorneys, CPAs, and geeks like me who understand that markets go up and down, but your tax return is a one-hit wonder. Your IRA, for most of you that are listening to the show, and 401k are worth more than your pensions now. And you've got people out there that are listening to this program that have got more than $1 million in IRAs and 401ks, and they need to be taken care of. So Angie, you've got a problem. You now have $1 million IRA. Congratulations.
Okay. Thank you.
If something were to happen to you, Ava at her mature age of 18, and Drew at his mature age of what, 24, 29, would you want them to each get a check for $500,000 all at one time that they could do anything they wanted to do with?
Maybe my son, because he's really mature for his age.
Wrong answer.
My daughter, no way. I'm going to give her several times to mess up.
So the problem with even giving Drew all of that money at one time is, one, it's all at one time. 2, it becomes a marital asset the moment he starts to take money out of that account to use it for he and his wife, to be able to pay house payments or anything else that it is, right? There's just all sorts of challenges with that. One of them that nobody wants to talk about is the challenge of they're working real hard to put $5,000 a year in a 401k, right? They're sacrificing emotionally to be able to save for a better future, and suddenly they get $500,000 at one time. It kind of takes away some of that individual success that they're doing on their own. I mean, we've all seen people who got stuff too easily, right? And they're just not the same people as people who had to work for it, right? They do not have the same framework. So I am not a big fan of just handing either of your kids a $500,000 check. So one of the things that we did was created trusts that were designed specially for IRAs. And December 20th of 2019, the IRS essentially eliminated or reduced the way that those trusts could operate. And what happens now, the stretch IRA no longer exists. The stretch just meaning that you could take money out if you were the beneficiary over your life expectancy, or the life expectancy of the decedent if your parents happen to be over 70 and a half when they died. Now everything in the account has to be emptied in 10 years. And so now the question is, how do I get everything, If that meant that that half the money, $500,000, went into your daughter's name, still at 28, she's going to have access to $500,000 plus all the growth. Oh, and yes, it's
taxes.
all going to be taxed at 1 year, which means by definition, she's going to be in the highest tax bracket that you can be in. None of this sounds good to me.
No.
Right? She gets married. It's now a marital asset. None of this sounds good to me. Right? So how do we fix it? What are we working on? And that's why I spend the time with the CPAs and the attorneys, and we've gone to some places to try to come up with the best clauses. We've worked with Shannon Evans, Bob Keebler, Natalie Choate's been on a couple calls with Ed. Working on trying to get that language narrowed down so that I'm still protecting my daughters from making mistakes, right? And still complying with the law in the event that, my untimely demise of Barb and I, because it does happen. I mean, we lose people, every so often that are my age category, over weird stuff that just happens, and accidents happen, and, cancer and heart attacks, and now you get this silly virus thing, right? It's, bad things happen, and we've got to be planned. We got to plan for it. So one of those things is you've really got to sit down and map out where your IRA and your 401k are going and how they're getting there. Go ahead, Angie.
It just seems so confusing to me anyway that an IRA, which is tax deferred, can even be in a trust that is not qualified. I mean, how do the two meld together? I mean, how are they taxed?
Because it was before, what it was essentially a flow-through trust. So you had an inherited IRA that I died, Angie inherits my IRA. So you have an inherited IRA that goes through a trust, and the trust job is to release the required minimum distribution to you. Now there is no required minimum distribution because it's an inherited IRA, right? Now it just has to be emptied within 10 years. So you can still have a trust. You can still have it go to the trust. And keep in mind, folks, I'm not an attorney. I don't play one on TV or radio. I just study this stuff a lot and work with a lot of attorneys who are attorneys and CPAs to try to be able to devise these strategies so that they match what the IRS's guidelines are, but they also match what your wishes and wants are. And I think a lot of people, I don't think most people ever woke up one day and thought they would have $1 million 401k, right? And then all of a sudden, because we started these in 2000s with very, very small contributions. In 2000s, we started these in 1980 with very small contributions, and then by the time you get to 2000. The year 2000, I started to see $250,000 to $300,000 401ks, and now we see the $1.5 to $2.5 million on a regular basis, and you just don't want that left behind to a child or.
Well, you talk about all the time in your talks that not all beneficiaries are created equal.
Yes.
And that life happens, and maybe one of them's got an issue, one doesn't, or one's older and one's younger, like my kids, and so within a trust like this. Can you have different rules like you do in a regular trust?
Absolutely. But it should be designed specifically for your IRA in most cases. Now, part of these rules changed, how that works because you don't have to have required minimum distributions.
Right.
But this is a challenge for people. And it's one of the things in your next steps meeting that we will cover for sure. You can give Angie a call at 800-928-4001 or go to yourlifeafterwork.com. Go to findyournextsteps.com, and we will sit down and have a conversation where we will give you things you need to consider today, things you're going to want to consider in the future, and if we choose to partner together, things that FEG will do for you. Again, it's 800-928-4001. We'll take a break and be right back.
Hi, Joni Michaels here. We know you care about your money, but are you tired of worrying about it? The Financial Enhancement Group takes care of people just like you who don't want to worry about their money. As fiduciaries, the team at the Financial Enhancement Group will care for your nest egg just like they would care for their own if they were in your situation. There are many decisions you'll need to make as you face retirement, and the team at the Financial Enhancement Group is here to help you. Call 800-928-4001 or go to yourlifeafterwork.com to set up a time to meet. The confusion and complexity of retirement is almost as daunting as is the excitement of retirement. Don't let your fear and frustration of taxes and investing derail your retirement. Call the Financial Enhancement Group at 800-928-4001. They'll give you a complimentary second opinion on your strategy for retirement. Begin your adventure in your life after work. Call 800-928-4001 or yourlifeafterwork.com. Now back to Consider This Program with Joe Clark.
Well, good morning and welcome back to Consider This Program. I'm your host, Joe Clark.
And I'm Angie Kinzer.
Angie says she has interesting trivia for me, and we all know that my mind is very focused on a very few areas.
I know, but you always hold my feet to the fire during the show, asking me all kinds of questions. So now it's my turn to ask you some questions.
Okay.
And I want to know if you know what an octothorpe is.
Something with 8.
Yes.
Thorpe. Is that what you said?
Thorpe. Yep. And
Octothorpe.
Yep. It happens to be the hashtag symbol.
No, I don't know that.
Yes, and it's an old English term. The thorpe was taken because it's a village with 8 pastures or something like that around. So it's a hashtag.
So every time I
octothorpe.
see that on Facebook or Twitter, neither of which do I participate on. Actually, that's not true, folks. I do have a financial enhancement group tidbits page where we
Yes.
do financial tidbits. There's about 1,000 of you that are listeners that have signed up. And we do a few things every week where we pass out quick little fun things, tidbits, financial tidbits, things that you're going to want to know. Aaron and Grant and Seth and Darren and Chris, Jamie, Dean, my planning team all put little things that are up on there. So it's Financial Enhancement Group, Financial Tidbits is a page that you might want to go to.
So see, you do see the hashtag.
I do every now and then.
You do see the octothorpe.
The octothorpe.
Okay, this one I would think you might know. You might know this one. Do you know what the 100 folds in a chef's hat represents?
Ooh, that's not even fair. All right, so for
'Cause
those
you love to
for
cook.
those of you who don't know this, I used to actually even have a cooking show where I taught people food and finance. That's where the name The Market Carver came from.
And this is across the board with all chefs.
That's
There's
a
100.
video. That's a video we send out every week called The Market Carver that is free. Again, you can get that on our website at yourlifeafterwork.com. The 100 folds. No.
Means 100 ways to cook an egg. That's when you become a master chef.
I've actually read the book, 100 Ways to Cook an Egg.
That's what the folds represent.
Because I thought there's no way in all, no way to cook an egg 100 ways. Oh, yes, there is. Now, I will argue that some of them are not that much different than others, but that's okay.
Okay. This is just something I'm going to throw out there because I know you're not a cat fan. You love dogs.
Yes, I love dogs
Some
a lot.
cats are allergic to human beings.
That's a fair trade, and I feel so sorry for the cat, but I'm excited to help him from his separation anxiety and not having to give him allergies.
Okay, and then did you know that there's a world record for the most world record titles?
Great, here we go. Hey, you've been listening to Consider This Program where we have all sorts of wonderful trivia. Seriously, if you want to sit down and understand more about your money and more about where you are right now, we're back to face-to-face meetings for those of you who want them. We've become rather proficient at the Zoom meeting and being able to have the next steps meeting. Just give Angie a call at 800-928-4001. We will do our best to give you things you need to consider today, things you're going to want to consider in the future, and if we choose to partner together, things that FEG will do for you. Have an outstanding week, my friends, and be safe.
You've been listening to Consider This Program with Joe Clark. As a certified financial planner, former professor at Purdue University, and with 31 years of experience helping families just like you eliminate the fear and confusion of retirement, Joe's team has the answers to your questions. Go to yourlifeafterwork.com or call 800-928-4001 and find a time to meet with the Financial Enhancement Group. There's nothing that will separate you from your retirement as fast as the IRS. There are many questions that can be answered at the Financial Enhancement Group. Questions questions like when to take Social Security, how will my 401k be taxed? These questions are just the tip of the iceberg, and you need to be asking these questions now before it's too late. The Financial Enhancement Group has offices in Anderson, Fishers, and Lafayette, Indiana, but they also take care of families in 30 other states. You care about your retirement, you don't want to worry about your money? Then the Financial Enhancement Group is right for you. As fiduciaries, they are required by law to treat your money as if it were their own and they were in the same situation. Call 800